Yo, what's good people? Today I have a special video, so I will be reviewing the Snackbox Micro. It is a hitbox, it's a leverless style controller, as you can see, pretty much typical layout. This button here is a D brake, which needs to be 3D printed, but it's kind of tailored to Street Fighter 6, so drive impact button and then obviously parry. But we're gonna get into the Snackbox Micro, strengths and weaknesses of the controller, different switch types, different configurations you can do, and just generally how the controller kind of benefits you. This is a special video, so if you do like the content, if you do find it helpful, drop that sub, drop a like. Let me know what you think about leverless style controllers in general. Do you feel like Street Fighter 6 was built for controller, or you feel like it was built for leverless? Do you feel like leverless has benefits, major benefits over, you know, typical controllers like pad, arcade stick, which generally have dominated the market for such a long time? It's only recently we've had leverless style controllers really get popular. So yeah, let me know what you think about leverless style controllers. We're gonna get straight into the video. So the Snackbox Micro is made by a company called Junk Food Arcades. So actually I'm gonna show you what the Snackbox is like. So the Snackbox is kind of a typical controller, typical size. It is small, but it is a typical controller. You know, it is quite chunky. Even though it's small, it's a chunky stick, chunky enclosure. So what the Snackbox Micro is supposed to do is really thin down that enclosure, and kind of the main selling point for me is the portability and how convenient it is to have such a small controller. You can slip in any bag, any laptop bag, even your pockets. It's such a small controller, and as you saw in the intro, the controller is very slim. So let me just get it. Very slim. So in comparison to my hands, it's pretty much the same size. I have small hands, so this benefits me a lot. I think the only thing I would say about this controller is it is depending on who you are, because I'm quite short, so I think this would be kind of more of an issue if it was a big guy using this controller, is lap play, because the controller is small and I like to kind of have my knees spread a little bit when I'm playing, especially like with stuff in my lap. So like controllers, I feel like it is an issue, lap play, and they do have alternative solutions to that. So this is called the Snackbox Micro XL, which is it's the same thing, but it's like it has extra room on the side, so it kind of extends the enclosure out a little bit, so it makes lap play a lot easier. I wouldn't say lap play is that much of an issue, but it can be an issue if you're like a big guy and you like to, you know, sit quite wide. Apart from that, I really like the Snackbox Micro. So they have loads of different options. So they have translucent cases, they have colored cases, they have I mean, all the cases have LED lighting in them anyway, and you can customize that. So you use an app, so you download an app from the App Store, you connect the Snackbox Micro to the app, it literally automatically connects. You open the app, it recognizes the Snackbox Micro, and then you customize all your lighting options from there. So that's really cool. You can update the firmware using the app as well, I'm pretty sure. So that's really cool that they've done that through an app. It's really convenient for people that aren't really tech savvy. I think it really helps to have an app and it just works. So that's really good as well. So as I was saying, they have loads of different options, different colors, different size enclosures, different buttons, because the buttons that come with the Snackbox Micro, they're actually kind of recessed a little bit. So it's like concave. So the button sits like in a curve, whereas normal traditional arcade buttons will have this type of style. So like a convex, like it like sits a little bit in like a dome shape, slight razority. So I prefer these type of buttons to the recessed buttons, but that's it's just personal preference at the end of the day. And I think Snackbox Micro and Junk Food Arcades did a very good job in offering customizability. And as you can see, and the thing about the Snackbox Micro is all the parts are modular. So if you wanted to upgrade to a PS5 board, for example, all you need to do is open your Snackbox Micro, slot the board out that was already in, and slot the new one in. It's really simple. I think they've done a great job of allowing you to kind of customize the controller to your specific needs, and I think that's also a big selling point for the Snackbox Micro. Very easy to customize. Look at these crazy designs, like this is insane. So yeah, you can print your own stuff off and slot the artwork in. The next thing, so with lever style controllers, is the switches. So the switches ultimately is going to determine how the controller feels and sounds. So they have silencing solutions, because one thing I will say about the Snackbox Micro, it's not a quiet controller at all. It's probably one of the loudest controllers I have to hand at the moment. It's quite loud, and we're gonna get into the switches. So now we're into the switches and the kind of silencing solutions. So the Micro has silencing pads. So what this is you stick it to the bottom of the keycaps, and it slightly reduces the sound. I would describe it as slightly muffled. It slightly mutes the sound a little bit more. Whereas like if you don't have those caps, because what is happening is the cap is hitting the enclosure, but also the switch is being activated and the switches are not silent. So you will get a lot of noise, and especially it depends how hard you, because I typically don't slam my switches and it's still really loud. So for people that really slam their switches down, it's going to be super loud. That's the one thing I will say about the Snackbox, is it is quite loud. So they do offer silencing pads, but in my opinion, it doesn't, it kind of just mutes the sound. It doesn't really lower the sound, it mutes it so it's not as harsh. And then obviously you can use O-rings as well, which is what I have. So I have the silencing pads, and then I have an O-ring underneath, which really helps with the noise. It's quite drastic. And there is a sound test, so I'll show you kind of through YouTube. So there is going to be some, you won't be able to hear it as if you was hearing it in person, but I think you'll be able to get a good understanding of how silencing solutions really alter the noise. So moving on to switches. So they have, on the website at least, they have 3 different types of switches. So this is the standard reds. So this is a low profile switch from Cali. So reds, they have a pro red, which is 35 grams of actuation force required. The regular is 50, I believe. Yep, 50. And then they have a super light switch, which is 20 grams. So I like slightly softer switches. So in my main hitbox, I have gamer finger buttons, which have MX Cherry Speed Silvers, if I remember correctly, and they are pretty light as far as buttons go, but they're not super light. So you probably won't get misinputs by resting your fingers on the buttons. It's more so fluid inputs, in my opinion. I value fluidity over anything, and consistency. So those switches give me that, which is why I like them. So I actually chose to get Cali Silvers, which are 45 grams of actuation force, so slightly lighter than the standard. And actually, in my opinion, the Silvers, they are very quiet. As a switch goes, the Silvers are more quiet than the reds, in my opinion. So I'm going to show you some sound testing, and you can kind of judge for yourself, because there's going to be a comparison between silvers with O-rings, reds with O-rings, silvers with no O-rings. So there's going to be a range of different comparisons, so you can see kind of how silencing solutions work, if they're beneficial to you, because everyone here sounds differently at the end of the day. So just personal preference. So we're going to get onto the sound test. Okay, so now we are in the playtest, and typically I have a few tests that I do to kind of test how the controller feels, how the buttons feel, movement. Movement is very important, especially because you're using your fingers for movement, individual fingers for movement. So yeah, the feeling of the controller is really important. One of the famous sequences I do is the lay sequence, which is you do razor rush, now forward 4, another razor rush. So if you can backdash a second razor rush, that means you have a good backdash, clean cancels, and that's how I test controllers in terms of movement. So I'm going to test it now. So as you can see there, very clean. I think a lot of people, they think because of the form factor, so I have this in my lap right now, and as you can see with the overlay, you can see my hands in comparison to the controller. So it is very compact and small. So I think a lot of people, they think, oh well, there must be some sort of compromise to kind of deliver this sort of form factor, and honestly I can't see any. It feels very clean. The only thing I would say is it's quite light. There's kind of a foam padding, so what you can do is you can screw a metal plate and then the foam padding on top of it to add that little bit more weight. They have options if you want to, you know, add more weight to it, because it is pretty light, I'm not gonna lie. But that's kind of the whole selling point of the Snackbox Micro. It's very light, compact and portable. So I'm just going to show you a few execution heavy things, just in case you're wondering, you know, can I do stuff like Nina's butterfly loops? Yes, you can. That is the answer. Yes, you can. And the thing is with hitbox is it's not going to transform your execution straight away. There's still practice. It's a whole learning curve. So, you know, if you're on pad or you're on stick and you switch to hitbox, you're not going to be able to do certain things you would be able to do on stick or pad straight away. But it's the consistency that is the added benefit for me anyway, and the latency benefits, because this board has a Brook. I think it's a PS4 fighting board. This does not work on PS5 because I got the old version, but they have new versions where they do work on PS5 natively, and you can just, it's just literally plug and play. So I'm gonna show you some execution stuff. So as you can see, no issues doing loops. It's just a good controller, solid. Buttons feel good, switches feel good, and obviously I think one of the main selling points as well, aside from, you know, form factor, is the fact that the switches are hot swappable. So if you don't like the switches inside, you can literally just change it, buy a new set, get lighter switches, get heavier switches, and just put them in there and try them out. I think it's very customizable, and I think that's also why you would want to get this as well, is because it is so customizable. You don't need to open up the back and do all this nonsense to switch out the switches. You can literally just pop off the keycap, slot a switch out and slot a switch back in, and try out a switch that you like. So I think, yeah, the Snackbox Micro is really solid, small. As I said, there's options. If you want slightly larger kind of enclosure, there are options for that. If you want a slightly heavier enclosure, there are options for that. There's pretty much options for anything that you can think of. Keycaps, switches, you know, even the LED lighting is customizable. So, and I forgot to show, but actually the cable, I don't know if you can see, but I have like a red cable. It's actually USB Type-C, which is really nice. I think we've been moving away from micro USB because it's quite inconsistent and it breaks easily. But USB Type-C is really good for connectivity. And yeah, the Snackbox Micro is just really solid in general. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.